What if the thing pulling your face down isn't in your face at all? Take off your shoes for a second. Stand with your feet flat, hip width apart, and press the underside of your big toe into the floor. Not curling it, just pressing straight down, like you're trying to leave a print of it in the ground. Hold that for 10 seconds. Now notice what happened higher up. Did your inner ankle firm up? Did something shift along the inside of your shin? For most people, yes. And that's strange, because nobody told your shin to do anything. You only asked your toe. That's the whole video in miniature. A 45-second press, done correctly, at one point in your body, and a response shows up in a completely different one. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly why that happens. You'll know which version of this press applies to your specific foot and jaw pattern, and you'll have a 5-minute routine you can start tonight. Somewhere between the 3rd and 6th week, something small happens. You catch your reflection in a specific mirror, maybe the one in your hallway, maybe the visor mirror in your car, and your cheekbone looks like it's sitting differently. Not younger, just settled, like it stopped being pulled somewhere. Here's the moment I actually want to start from, because it's more honest than the diagnostic version. You hang up the phone after a call with your mother, or your daughter, or whoever it is in your family who has that effect on your jaw. And you catch yourself in the mirror right after. Not posing, just passing by it. And one side of your face looks tired in a way the other side doesn't. You've probably done this. You've probably also assumed it was the conversation. It wasn't just the conversation. It was 30 years of walking on a foot that never learned to press down correctly. And the conversation just happened to be the moment you looked. I'm going to walk you through this properly. What you need before you start, the actual mechanics of the press, a 3-question check that tells you which pattern you're dealing with, and what to watch for over the following weeks. Nothing here requires equipment. Bare feet, a wall, or the back of a sturdy chair for balance, and about 5 minutes. That's the entire prerequisite list. Before the mechanics though, you need the map, because pressing your toe without understanding what it's connected to is like following an instruction with no idea what it's for. So let's build that map first, slowly, using your own body as the reference, not a textbook. Put your finger on the underside of your big toe, right where the pad meets the bone. There's a tendon that runs from that spot up through your arch, behind your inner ankle bone. You can feel it there if you press gently just below and behind that bony bump on the inside of your ankle. That same tendon continues up the inside of your calf, tucked behind the shin bone, not on the surface where most calf muscles sit, but underneath, closer to the bone. It keeps going behind your knee, along the inside of your thigh, up towards your groin, and connects into the deep muscles around your hip and pelvis, the ones that let you lift your knee towards your chest. From there, the same continuous sheet of tissue runs up the front of your spine, through your diaphragm, the muscle that does the actual work of your breathing, and continues up through the front of your throat, around your voice box, up to the underside of your jaw and chin. And this is the part that matters for what you're watching this video for. That same tissue sheet has direct connections into the muscles of your cheeks and the fascia around your eyes. One continuous structure, foot to face. Not connected symbolically, connected physically, the way a single piece of fabric is connected from one hem to the other. Here's a number that makes this less abstract. The average adult takes somewhere between 4,000 and 6,000 steps a day. If your arch collapses even slightly on each one of those steps, and for a large portion of adults over 40 it does, because the muscles along that inner line weaken with disuse long before anyone notices, that's 4,000 to 6,000 small downward pulls per day, every day, for years, traveling up that same line. It's not one dramatic event, it's compounding. Over a decade, the tissue along that line shortens and tightens the way any tissue does when it's pulled in one direction repeatedly without ever being asked to do the opposite. And because the top end of that line sits right at your jaw and cheek, the pull shows up there as a subtle downward drag that no cream, no serum, and no amount of sleep is going to reach, because none of those are working on tissue that starts at your foot. That's not the whole story of your face, and it shouldn't be treated like it is. Whatever you're already doing, a good moisturizer, sun protection, sleeping on your back instead of your face, that's handling the surface, and the surface matters. This is the layer underneath it that nobody's addressing. The mechanical pull instead of the skin quality. Both things are true at once. Now let's get your feet back on the floor, because the press itself has a few details in it that are easy to get wrong on the first try, and I'd rather flag those now than let you practice the wrong version for 2 weeks. Stand with your feet hip width apart. Weight even between both feet. Press the underside of your big toe down into the floor, the flat pad of it, not the tip, and definitely not by curling the toe upward and stabbing down with the joint. That's mistake number 1, and it's the most common one. Something like 6 or 7 out of every 10 people I've watched try this for the first time default to curling the toe instead of pressing it flat. Because curling feels more active, more like doing something. It isn't. Curling recruits the wrong small muscles on top of your foot and does almost nothing for the line we're targeting. The correct press is quieter than that. It should feel like your toe is simply becoming heavier, sinking, rather than gripping. While you press, keep your weight balanced across the whole foot. Don't let it roll onto the outer edge. That's mistake number 2. Rolling outward is the foot's habitual escape route. It's the shape most feet have already adapted into after years of the same walking pattern. So your foot will try to slip back into it the moment you stop paying attention. Hold the press for 45 seconds. Somewhere around the 20-second mark, most people notice their breathing has gone shallow or has stopped altogether. That's mistake number 3. And it matters more than the first 2, because that same line runs straight through your diaphragm. If you hold your breath while you press, you're tensing the exact structure you're trying to release higher up, and you're working against yourself without realizing it. Keep your ribs moving. Slow inhale, slow exhale, the whole 45 seconds through. Do this 3 times on one foot before switching. Then do the other foot. That's the entire technique. 5 minutes, most days, bare feet, one wall for balance if you need it. My grandmother never did anything like this. Nobody in her generation would have fought to connect a foot exercise to a face. She had a jaw that clicked on the left side for the last 20 years of her life, and she called it just her jaw. The way you call your own aches inherited facts rather than solvable problems. My mother's generation started paying attention to posture. She'd tell me to stand up straight, shoulders back, and that was as far down as the conversation about your body's structure ever went. Nobody looked at the foot. I only started looking at the foot because a client of mine, years into her own practice, with a completely different protocol, mentioned almost as an aside that her left cheek had started looking different since she'd fixed a limp from an old ankle injury. That offhand comment is the reason this entire line of work exists for me now. So, before you keep going with the press itself, there's a 3-question check worth doing, because the version of this that helps you most depends on which pattern you're actually carrying. This isn't a personality quiz. It's closer to reading the wear pattern on the bottom of an old pair of shoes. The answer's usually already written on your body. You just haven't been asked to look at it yet. First question. Pick up a pair of shoes you've worn regularly for at least 6 months and look at the sole. Is the wear even across both shoes, or is one shoe worn more heavily on the outer edge than the other? Second question. Does your jaw click, pop, or feel tight consistently on one side when you chew or yawn? And if so, which side? Third question, and this one takes a mirror. Look at yourself straight on in even light and check whether one cheekbone sits slightly lower or looks slightly flatter than the other. Not dramatically, just enough that a photo would show it if you compared left and right. If your wear pattern is even, your jaw doesn't favor a side, and your cheekbones look symmetrical, you're doing the press exactly as I described. Evenly, both feet, 3 rounds each, most days. Simple maintenance, nothing more complicated required. If one shoe shows heavier outer edge wear and your jaw clicks on the same side as that shoe, that's your dominant pattern. Do 4 rounds on that foot to every 3 on the other, because that side has more built-up pull to release and needs the extra repetition to catch up. And if your jaw clicks on the opposite side from the heavier worn shoe, which happens, because the line can cross and compensate rather than run straight, do the press evenly on both feet, but pay closer attention during the hold to whether your jaw unclenches on its own around the 30-second mark. For a lot of people with that crossed pattern, that's the exact moment they feel their back molars separate slightly on their own, without being told to relax the jaw at all. None of these patterns are wrong. They're just information about years of walking that nobody ever asked your body to account for until right now. Here's what to actually watch for as the weeks go by, because the changes are quiet and easy to miss if you're waiting for something dramatic. Somewhere around week 2, a lot of people notice they can balance on one foot with their eyes closed a few seconds longer than before. That's the deep line along your ankle waking back up, doing its actual job of stabilizing you instead of sitting dormant. Around week 4, the jaw click that showed up in your diagnostic check often gets quieter, sometimes just on stairs at first, before it's noticeably different, then gradually elsewhere. And somewhere between week 5 and week 8, it varies. And I'd rather tell you it varies than promise you a specific date. That mirror moment happens. The hallway mirror, the car visor, wherever your particular unposed check-in happens. And your face looks less like it's being held down and more like it's simply resting. I won't pretend this is finished at week 8 though, because it isn't. Not in the way a course of medication finishes. The pull you're releasing came from decades of ordinary walking, and ordinary walking doesn't stop. It just gets an extra 5 minutes added to counter it most days. That's the part of this that's a little bittersweet, honestly. There's no final day where you're done and it's fixed forever. It becomes something quiet you do, the way you brush your teeth without expecting to be finished with brushing teeth. The reward isn't an ending. It's that the maintenance itself gets easier and shorter the longer you keep at it, until it barely registers as effort at all. Think about the phone call from the beginning of this. Your mother, your daughter, whoever it is that gets to your jaw. Somewhere down the line, you'll hang up, pass the same mirror, catch the same unposed glance at yourself. And what you'll see won't be about the conversation anymore. And it won't be about age either. It'll just be a face that isn't being pulled anywhere it doesn't want to go. Everything I just walked you through, the tendon under your toe, the line up through your ankle and hip and diaphragm, all the way to your cheekbone, connects through one continuous system. And this one press works one point of entry into it. The full system has 12 of these release points mapped out, sequenced over 30 days so you're not guessing which order to work through them, with labeled diagrams showing exactly where to place your hands or feet for each one, plus a daily tracking sheet so you can see your own pattern change week over week. That's the Connected Face protocol, and it's linked in the description and the pinned comment if you want the entire chain, not just this one entry point into it. If you're the kind of person who'd rather understand what's actually happening in your own body than just be told to do something and hope it works, you're exactly who this channel is for. And there's a lot more of this mapped out already waiting for you. If this changed how you'll stand the next time you're barefoot in your kitchen, tell me which pattern you found in the comments, even side, dominant side, or crossed, because I read every one of them and they shape what I map out next. And if you haven't already, subscribing means you won't miss whatever this particular investigation turns into. Go press your foot. Variant 1. There's a version of you that exists only in the split second after you hang up the phone. Not the version composing your face for a video call, not the one smiling for a photo, the one caught off guard, passing a mirror in the hallway right after a conversation with your mother or your daughter or whoever gets under your skin in that particular family way. That version doesn't perform. And if you've looked at her carefully, you may have noticed one side of her face sitting lower than the other, tireder, like it's being pulled down by something you can't name. I can name it. It starts at your big toe. Take your shoes off right now if you can. Stand with your feet hip width apart and press the pad of your big toe flat into the floor. No curling, just pressing, and hold it for 10 seconds. Feel anything shift along your inner ankle or shin? That's not random. That's the first 10 inches of a continuous line of tissue that runs from that exact spot under your toe all the way up to your cheekbone. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how it gets there, which of 3 patterns your own body is running, and a 5-minute routine that starts undoing years of pull tonight. Here's what you need before we start. Bare feet, a wall or sturdy chair nearby for balance, and about 5 minutes most days. That's the whole list. Before the mechanics though, you need the map through it becomes something quiet you do, the way you brush your teeth without expecting to be finished with brushing teeth. The reward isn't an ending. It's that the maintenance itself gets easier and shorter the longer you keep at it, until it barely registers as effort at all. Go back to that mirror moment for a second. the one right after the phone call, the one where you're not performing for anyone. That's the test that actually matters, more than any photo you'd pose for. Somewhere down the line, you'll hang up, pass that same mirror, catch that same unguarded glance, and the pull that used to show up there won't have anywhere left to go. If you're someone who wants the mechanism before the instruction, not the other way around, you're going to want everything else that's mapped out on this channel already. Tell me in the comments which of the 3 patterns turned up when you checked your own shoes and your own jaw. I read all of them, and they shape what gets investigated next. Subscribe if you don't want to miss where this goes. Go press your foot. 6,000 steps a day. That's roughly what the average adult walks without thinking about it once. Now imagine that on every single one of those 6,000 steps, something in your arch gives way just slightly. Not enough to notice, not enough to hurt. And that small give travels upward through your ankle, your calf, your hip, your spine, and ends of all places at your cheekbone. That's not a guess. That's one continuous line of tissue. And you can test the first link of it right now with your shoes off. Press the pad of your big toe flat into the floor, not curled, just pressed, and hold for 10 seconds. Notice your inner ankle firm up, your shin do something you didn't ask it to do. Good. That's the beginning of a chain that ends at your face. And this video walks you through the entire thing. What it looks like when it's working correctly, a 3-question check for which version applies to you specifically, and a 5-minute routine you can start the moment this ends. You'll need bare feet, something sturdy nearby for balance, and 5 minutes. Nothing else. Before the mechanics though, you need the map through it becomes something quiet you do, the way you brush your teeth without expecting to be finished with brushing teeth. The reward isn't an ending, it's that the maintenance itself gets easier and shorter the longer you keep at it, until it barely registers as effort at all. 6,000 steps a day pulled you into this pattern without your permission. 5 minutes a day is what it takes to ask for some of it back. Not all at once and not forever finished, just steadily, the way it accumulated in the first place. The next time you hang up the phone with whoever it is that gets to your jaw and you catch that unguarded glance in the mirror, notice what's not pulling anymore. If you're the kind of person who needed the mechanism spelled out before you'd trust the instruction, this channel is going to keep giving you exactly that. Let me know in the comments which of the 3 patterns showed up when you checked your own shoes. Even, dominant, or crossed, because that's what tells me what to map out next. Subscribe if you want to be there for it. Go press your foot. Let's start with what working correctly actually looks like, because most people have never seen it and wouldn't recognize it if it were happening in front of them. A foot that's loading the way it's supposed to spreads weight across 3 points: the base of your big toe, the base of your pinky toe, and your heel, evenly, almost lazily, like a tripod that isn't trying hard to stay up. Watch someone with that pattern walk barefoot on sand sometime. The footprint they leave is full, unbroken, a clean oval with no gaps. That's rare. Most footprints have a thin waist in the middle, sometimes barely any print at all along the outside edge. Sometimes a print so heavy on the inside that the big toe practically drags. Each of those variations isn't cosmetic. It's a record of where the load actually went. And load that goes somewhere unevenly at the foot doesn't just stay at the foot. It has to be absorbed somewhere else up the chain, because the body doesn't let force simply disappear. Here's the part that surprised me enough to keep digging into it. When the arch collapses even slightly on one side, the tissue response isn't local. The deep fascia running up the inside of the shin, the same sheet of connective tissue, not a separate one, just a continuation of it, twists to compensate. That twist changes how the knee tracks. The knee twist changes the angle the hip absorbs weight at. The hip changes what the lower back has to do to keep you upright. And because the whole thing is one continuous fascial sling from sole to skull, this isn't poetic language. It's literally how anatomists describe the superficial back line and its associated chains. A torsion that starts at your arch shows up measurably in tension patterns across your jaw and cheek by the time it's traveled that far. Not always the same side. Sometimes it crosses over entirely, which is its own pattern, and we'll get to that in a second. So when I said in the opening that pressing your toe flat and feeling your inner ankle firm up was, quote, the beginning of a chain, I meant that literally, not metaphorically. What you felt was the tibialis posterior tendon doing its job, the muscle tendon unit most responsible for holding your arch up in the first place. And that tendon is fascially continuous through a series of connective handoffs with the tissue sheet that eventually wraps around your masseter and up into the tissue at your cheekbone. There's no gap in the chain. There's no place along that route where the tissue stops and something unrelated starts. It's one structure wearing many names depending on which textbook chapter you're in. Now, why does this matter for your face specifically, instead of just your knees or your back, which is where most people assume all this tension would logically end up? Two reasons. First, because the jaw and the muscles of the face are, unlike almost every other soft tissue in the body, directly wired into how you hold expression. And expression is something you do constantly, all day, without noticing. Which means any baseline tension sitting in that area gets reinforced by muscular habit thousands of times daily, instead of just sitting there passively like it might in, say, your hamstring. Second, and this is the one people find hardest to believe until they test it themselves, the fascial planes of the neck and jaw are unusually thin and unusually well supplied with sensory nerve endings compared to fascia elsewhere in the body. Which means tension there doesn't stay silent. It shows up as a felt tightness, a certain heaviness under the jaw, a sense that your face isn't quite sitting the way it used to, well before it shows up as anything visible in a mirror. Your body is already telling you where the load ended up. Most people have just never been taught to listen for it in that specific place. The 3-question check. I promised you a way to tell which version of this applies to you, because the routine that helps an even pattern is not the routine that helps a crossed pattern. And doing the wrong one for weeks won't hurt you, but it will waste your 5 minutes a day on something that isn't addressing what's actually happening in your tissue. So here are the 3 questions, and you'll want your bare feet for this, standing on a hard floor, not carpet. Carpet hides the information you need. Question 1. Stand normally, the way you'd stand waiting in a line, not thinking about your posture at all. Look down. Is one kneecap pointing slightly more inward than the other? Don't correct it, just look. If both knees point the same direction, straight ahead, or both drifting slightly in, that's your first data point toward what I'm going to call the even pattern, even if the drift itself isn't perfectly symmetrical. If one knee points in and the other points out, or one points dramatically more than the other, hold that thought, because that's leaning you toward crossed. Question 2. Sit down, cross one leg over the other, however feels automatic to you. Don't think about it, just cross the way you always cross. Notice which leg went on top. Now uncross and cross the other way, on purpose, the way that feels unfamiliar. Was there a real difference in how natural that felt, or basically none? A strong, easy default with real resistance to the opposite crossing is a second vote toward dominant or crossed. Almost no difference between the two is a second vote toward even. Question 3, and this is the one that ties it together. Stand up again, bare feet, and this time press your whole foot flat, both feet, the way you did in the opening for one foot. Hold for 10 seconds. Now close your eyes and pay attention, without moving anything, to your jaw. Does one side feel tighter, fuller, like there's more resting tension sitting in the masseter than the other side? Or does it feel roughly the same on both sides? Maybe generally tight, but not asymmetrically so. Here's how the 3 answers sort you. If your knees pointed the same way, your leg crossing habit showed little preference, and your jaw tension felt roughly symmetrical, you're in the even pattern. This is actually the most common group, and good news, it's also the easiest to work with because the correction is symmetrical too. You're not undoing years of one-sided compensation, you're just tightening up a system that's already basically balanced but has gone slightly slack everywhere at once, the way a rope gets weaker uniformly rather than fraying in one spot. If your knees pointed the same direction as each other, but your leg crossing and jaw tension both lean toward one consistent side, say right knee slightly more than left, strong preference to cross right over left, tighter jaw on the right. You're in the dominant pattern. This is the group where one side of the body has simply been doing more work for longer, probably for reasons that have nothing to do with your feet directly. How you carry a bag, which hand you favor, an old injury you've forgotten about, and the arch collapse on that side is a downstream symptom, not the root cause. The routine for this group is asymmetrical on purpose. We're not trying to make both sides equal by force. We're trying to give the overworked side more recovery input than the other. And if your knee answers didn't match each other, one knee drifting one way, the other drifting the opposite way, or the crossing habit didn't line up cleanly with either knee, or your jaw tension turned out to be on the opposite side from what your knee answer would have predicted, you're in the cross pattern. This is the one people find most confusing when they first notice it, because it feels like it shouldn't make sense. Why would the right foot's problem show up on the left side of the jaw? But it's actually the most mechanically obvious of the three once you know the reason. The fascial slings that run from foot to face aren't purely vertical. Several of them spiral. This is genuinely how they're structured. It's called the spiral line in some of the manual therapy literature, and it crosses the midline of the body on its way up. So a right-sided foot collapse, traveling up that particular spiral sling, can absolutely land as left-sided jaw tension. If that's you, don't fight it or assume you measured wrong. The routine for the crossed pattern deliberately works diagonally, one foot paired with the opposite side of the face, because that's how the tissue itself is laid out. Take a second and actually place yourself in one of those three groups before you go on, because everything from here forward assumes you know which one you are. The 5-minute routine. All three versions share the same 5 stages: foot, ankle, calf and hip, spine, jaw. But the emphasis, the hold times, and in the cross pattern's case, which side pairs with which will differ. I'll walk through the base version first, which is what the even pattern uses at full time on both sides, and then tell you exactly what changes if you're dominant or crossed. Stage 1, feet, 45 seconds. This is the toe press from the opening, but held longer and done with a tension instead of as a quick test. Stand barefoot, weight even, and press the pad of each big toe down like you're trying to spread the floor apart underneath you, without curling the toes under. You should feel your arch lift very slightly, not cramp, lift, and that inner ankle tendon firm up again. Hold that active press for 45 seconds. If you're in the dominant pattern, give your weaker side 60 seconds and your stronger side 30. If you're crossed, do both sides evenly here. The crossing correction happens later in the sequence, not at the foot stage. Stage 2, ankle, 30 seconds each side. Still standing, lift one heel just slightly off the ground, enough that your weight shifts onto the ball of that foot, and slowly roll your ankle through a small controlled circle. Not a big wobbly swing, small and deliberate, like you're tracing the rim of a coffee cup with your big toe. This mobilizes the exact tendon sheath you engaged in stage 1 and keeps the tissue gliding rather than gripping. Even pattern, 30 seconds each side. Dominant pattern, 40 on the weak side, 20 on the strong. Cross pattern, again, even on both, 30 and 30. Stage 3, calf and hip, 60 seconds. And this is where the patterns start to genuinely diverge. For even and dominant patterns, you're doing a wall calf stretch. Hands on a wall, one foot back with the heel pressed flat to the floor, front knee bent until you feel the stretch up the back of the straight legs calf. Held for the assigned time on each side. 30-30 for even, 40-20 favoring the weak side for dominant. For the cross pattern though, you're not stretching the calf in isolation. You're doing the same wall stretch, but as you hold it, you gently rotate your hips toward the side of the back leg. A small controlled twist, maybe 15 degrees, held at end range for the last 20 seconds of the 60. That rotation is what engages the spiral sling instead of just the straight line one. And it's the piece that actually addresses why your pattern crossed the midline in the first place. Stage 4, spine, 90 seconds, no standing required, you can sit for this one. It's a slow seated twist, hand on the opposite knee, rotating from the ribs rather than yanking with the shoulders. Held gently at the first point of resistance, not pushed past it. Even pattern, 45 seconds each direction. Dominant pattern, rotate toward your dominant side for 60 seconds, the other direction for 30. You're releasing more on the side that's been doing more holding. Cross pattern, this is the other half of the correction alongside stage 3's hip rotation. Rotate toward the side opposite your tighter jaw for the full 90 seconds in one direction only, no split. That single long rotation, paired with the diagonal hip work from stage 3, is what actually unwinds a spiral pattern instead of just loosening a straight one. Stage 5, jaw, 45 seconds. And this is the only stage that touches your face directly, and even then only lightly. 2 fingers, flat, not pressing hard, resting just below the ear where the jaw hinges. Let your mouth open slightly, not wide, and make small, slow, figure 8 motions with those 2 fingers over the joint, following the tissue rather than digging into it. This isn't a massage meant to force anything to release through pressure. It's a signal to the nervous system that the area is safe to soften, after everything below it has just told the same nervous system the same thing through 4 stages of mechanical unwinding. Even in dominant patterns, both sides, roughly equal time, 22 seconds each. Cross pattern. This is the one place all 3 patterns land the same. Spend the full 45 seconds on the tighter side only, because that's the side that's actually been carrying the downstream tension the whole time, and it deserves the full attention now that the rest of the chain has already been addressed. That's the whole routine. And if you added the times up, you'll notice it comes to almost exactly 5 minutes for every version, which was deliberate. I didn't want to hand you something that quietly grew into 15 minutes, the way these things tend to. What you should expect and what you shouldn't. Nothing here is going to change your face by tomorrow, and I'd be lying to you if I implied otherwise. What tends to happen, based on what people doing this consistently have reported back, is smaller and slower, and honestly, more convincing because of that. Somewhere between day 4 and day 10, most people notice the jaw tightness they identified in question 3 of the check has become harder to find. Not gone, just less obvious, less automatic. Around week 2 or 3, several people have mentioned the unguarded glance moment I referenced in the close of the earlier section. Catching your own reflection in a window or a phone screen when you're not posing for it, not expecting to look at yourself, and noticing something's different before you can articulate what. That's usually the first real marker, because it's happening in a moment when you have no reason to be flattering yourself. You're not checking to see if it worked, you just happen to see it. By week 4 to 6, for people who've kept the routine to actual daily practice rather than 3 times a week when they remember, the change tends to move from something you notice in specific moments to something that's simply become the new baseline, the way I described in the earlier section. No longer an event, just the way things are now. That's also usually when the routine itself starts taking less conscious effort, because your nervous system has stopped treating the movements as unfamiliar corrections and started treating them as maintenance, the same way brushing your teeth eventually stopped being a task you had to remind yourself to think through. What it won't do? It won't correct a genuinely collapsed arch that needs orthotic or medical intervention. If question 1 revealed something dramatic, a knee that's visibly, consistently rotated well past what a small drift would suggest, that's worth a conversation with a podiatrist, not just 5 minutes a day with a video. It also won't override chronic tension that has a source with nothing to do with your feet at all. Jaw clenching from stress, for instance, layers on top of this pattern rather than being caused by it. And if that's a significant piece of what you're dealing with, this routine will help the mechanical piece without touching the other piece, and you'll want to address both. One thing people get wrong in week 2, the most common mistake isn't skipping days, though that happens too. It's escalating, deciding that if 45 seconds of toe press is good, 90 must be better. Or pressing harder during the jaw stage because it feels like more should mean faster. It doesn't work that way with fascia. The tissue responds to consistent, gentle, repeated signal over time, not intensity. Pushing harder in a single session tends to trigger a mild protective tightening rather than a release, which is the opposite of what you're after. If you find yourself wanting to do more, the better move is to hold the same times, but do the sequence twice a day instead of once, morning and evening, rather than doubling any single stage. That's the one adjustment that actually accelerates things without working against the mechanism. Closing. 6,000 steps a day pulled you into this pattern without your permission. I said that already, but it's worth sitting with once more, now that you know the actual mechanism behind it. Now that 6,000 steps isn't just a number, but a picture you can hold in your head of load traveling upward, once per step, all day, whether you're paying attention or not. 5 minutes is what it takes to ask for some of it back. Not all at once, not forever finished, just steadily, the same patient, repetitive way it accumulated in the first place. One press of the foot at a time. The next time you hang up the phone with whoever it is that gets to your jaw, and you catch that unguarded glance in the mirror on your way past, notice what's not pulling anymore. That's not vanity, that's information. The same kind you got the first time you pressed your toe into the floor and felt something answer all the way up in your ankle. Your body has been sending you that information the whole time. Most of us were just never taught where to feel for it. Let me know in the comments which pattern showed up when you actually checked, even, dominant, or crossed, because that's genuinely what tells me what to map out next, not a rhetorical ask. I read them. And the next video in this series gets built out of what people report back. Subscribe if you want to be there for it. Go press your foot. One more thing, and then I'll actually let you go. I got a version of this question enough times after the first video in this series that I want to answer it here instead of burying it in the comment reply. People ask, if the load is traveling up from the foot the whole time, why does the jaw take the hit and not, say, the neck or the shoulder or somewhere lower down the chain? Why does it end up at the face at all? The honest answer is that it doesn't only end up at the face. It ends up everywhere along the chain that has a weak link. And for a lot of people, the neck and shoulders do take some of it. That's the tightness you feel after a long day that has nothing to do with your desk chair. The kind you rub at absently without ever connecting it to your feet. But the face gets the most noticeable hit for a structural reason, not a mysterious one. The fascia sheet that runs up the front of the body doesn't stop at the collarbone. It continues into the neck, and then it inserts into the structures around the jaw and the underside of the chin. And it has fewer places to distribute the tension once it gets there. Lower down, the load has your hips, your lower back, your ribs, big mobile structures that can each absorb a little bit of the pull and spread it out. By the time it reaches the jaw, there's nowhere left to hand it off to. It has to stop somewhere, and it stops there. Concentrated in a small area with delicate tissue that was never built to be a shock absorber. That's why the same mechanical problem that starts at your arch shows up on camera at your jawline instead of somewhere you'd never think to film. And that's also why the routine works the way it does. You're not trying to release the jaw directly, even though the jaw stage is in there and it matters. You're trying to fix the handoff points all the way down the chain. So the jaw stops being the place where all the unresolved tension from everywhere else finally runs out of room. Toe press, arch, ankle, calf, and only then the face, in that order, because that's the order the tension actually travels. And undoing something works best in reverse of how it was built. If you've been doing the sequence for a full 2 weeks now and you're not seeing anything yet, before you decide it isn't working for you, check 2 things. First, are you actually landing on the arch stage or skipping past it because it's the hardest one to feel? That's the stage people rush, because unlike the toe press, which gives you something obvious right away, the arch pull is quieter, and it's easy to convince yourself you did it when you move through it too fast to register anything. Go back and slow that one stage down specifically, even if you keep everything else the same. Second, are you doing this on a hard floor, standing, barefoot, the way it's meant to be done, or doing it in shoes, on carpet, sitting down. The signal has to travel through actual contact with the ground. Socks on carpet mute it. It's a small thing, and it's the kind of detail people leave out when they're rushing through a routine at the end of the day. And it's also the kind of detail that's the entire difference between this working and this doing nothing at all. I know that's a lot of troubleshooting for a 5-minute routine, and I get why that might feel disproportionate, but that's sort of the point of everything I've been trying to say across this whole video. Small, precise, repeated inputs matter more than effort here, and that cuts both ways. It's why 45 seconds of gentle pressure can undo something that's been building for years. And it's also why doing the same 5 minutes with your attention half somewhere else, rushing the quiet stage, standing on the wrong surface, can leave you doing everything and getting nothing, and walking away thinking the whole idea doesn't work. It works. It's just as unforgiving about precision as it is generous about effort. And once you felt it land correctly one time, you won't need me to tell you the difference again. You'll know it the way you knew that first toe press. That small, specific answer traveling up through your ankle, telling you the line is open. Go check the mirror again in 2 weeks. Not for a miracle, for the same quiet piece of information you've been collecting the whole time. One press of the foot at a time.